Hello everyone, this is Javier Torres from Anarchy Live, and back here we actually have a new logo. Now you can probably see it backwards, so I'll just show it to you. How about that? Alright, so I worked hard this week in actually completing that logo, so hopefully you'll like it. Let me know in the comments what you thought about the logo. So okay, in the last video that I made, I talked to you guys about the Moto G cell phone because I wanted you guys to get an idea of what a good cheap cell phone would be. However, as much as I like the Moto G, it's far from being a top of the line phone. So what can you do if you want a top of the line phone, but you can't afford to pay $700 for it? Well, you could go into a 2-year contract, but you're stuck for 2 years. So today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the Nexus 5, which is currently my favorite phone and the one I use every day. When you just look at the Nexus 5 from the outside, it doesn't look like much. It actually looks kind of simple. However, everything that makes the Nexus 5 special is on the inside. It actually has the same CPU as the LG G2. I don't want to go into too many details trying to explain what the Nexus line is, but there's a couple things that you need to know. First of all, the Nexus line belongs to Google. Google doesn't create the actual phones, they use other companies to make the phones for them. Samsung, LG, HTC, Sony, so many others, they all use Android. However, they all modify Android to make it look more unique for them. The problem is that by making all these modifications, they change Android. Sometimes for the best, other times not so much. So basically, Google makes Android, Samsung, Sony, and so many others take that Android and they change it so that it works and looks the way they want it to. However, by doing that, they are changing Android so that it doesn't quite work the way it originally was supposed to. So a lot of times Android ends up being slower than it really should be. So basically Google got tired of everyone changing Android and people not being able to experience Android the way they meant for it to be. And then they decided to start their own line of phones that use 100% pure Android the way Google meant for it to be used. The other thing that Google wanted to do was make the phone as good as possible, but as cheap as possible. So instead of making a $600 or $700 phone, Google decided to make a $350 phone. The latest Nexus, the Nexus 5, is actually made by LG, and it was actually based on the LG G2, which is one of those $600 phones. Basically on the inside, it's almost identical to the LG G2, except for the camera and maybe the screen. It still has a very good camera and it still has a very good screen. It has a very nice 1080p display. Now a lot of people complain saying that it looks kind of washed out. I don't really mind it. I think a lot of phones out there tend to be a little bit too saturated, and I personally wouldn't mind if this one was a little bit more saturated, but it's really not something that bothers me. The rear camera on the Nexus 5 is an 8 megapixel camera, which isn't really anything special nowadays, but it does have optical image stabilization, which helps out a lot. It doesn't really take the most decent low light pictures, but for the most part, pictures are pretty good and video is steady. One of the things that I really love about the Nexus phones is that they are unlocked, meaning they are not tied to any carriers. There were a couple in the past that were tied to carriers. There was even a Verizon one, but Verizon really messed that one up. But really the last couple of Nexus phones have been completely free of any carrier attachment. The last truly carrier-free Nexus phone was actually the Nexus 4, and that was only a GSM phone. So in the United States, you can only use it with T-Mobile or AT&T or one of the many other prepaid services out there that use T-Mobile and AT&T towers. However, the Nexus 5 actually does have some CDMA radios, so it will work also on Sprint. It will not work on Verizon, not because Google didn't want it to, but because Verizon doesn't want it. Thanks again, Verizon. Although to be fair, Verizon probably would have messed up the Nexus 5 the same way they messed up the Samsung Galaxy Nexus. I really don't know if you can use the Nexus 5 on US Cellular. I haven't really checked because again, who cares? So yeah, if you ended up getting into a contract with a LG G2 or a S4 or a Note 3 or some other powerhouse phone, and then something happened to it and you can't afford a $600 or $700 phone, but you don't really want to go back to having crappy phones, then the Nexus 5 is definitely worth looking into. Chances are you're probably gonna like the Nexus 5 better anyway. Alright, that's all I have for today. Please leave me your comments, subscribe to the channel, there's a link around here somewhere. Follow me on Twitter and Google+, and that is all. That's all I got. Yeah, I'm out. Bye.